The Galactic Academy of Strategic Excellence stood like a crown jewel floating in the darkness of space. Its massive structure stretched across 3 kilometers of reinforced titanium and crystalline observation decks. For 2,000 years, this institution had trained the brightest minds from every corner of the galaxy. Admirals, diplomats, scientists, and warriors had all walked through its halls. The Academy only accepted students from the most powerful species in the known universe. Humans were not on that list. Sarah Chen was 17 years old when she received the acceptance letter. She lived on Earth Colony 7, a small mining settlement on the edge of human-controlled space. Her mother worked double shifts in the processing plant. Her father had died in a cave collapse when she was 9. Sarah spent her days helping repair old equipment and her nights reading whatever technical manuals she could find in the colony's limited database. The letter arrived through the quantum communication relay on a Tuesday morning. Sarah was elbow-deep in a broken water recycler when her friend Marcus came running with the news. The holographic seal of the Galactic Academy glowed blue and gold as Sarah read the words 3 times before believing them. She had been selected for immediate enrollment. Full scholarship. Transport would arrive in 3 days. The letter congratulated her on her outstanding examination results and promised that her unique talents would flourish at the Academy. Sarah had never taken any examination. She had never even heard of the Galactic Academy until that moment. But she also knew that opportunities like this did not come twice. Her mother cried and told her to go. Marcus promised to look after her mother while she was away. 3 days later, a sleek transport ship landed on the dusty surface of Colony 7. Sarah carried one small bag containing everything she owned. As she stepped aboard, she noticed the ship's pilot giving her a strange look. The pilot was a Valorian, one of the tall, blue-skinned species known for their mathematical abilities. He checked her identification 3 times before allowing her to take her seat. The journey to the Academy took 4 days through hyperspace. Sarah spent most of that time reading through the Academy's orientation materials on her personal tablet. She learned that the Galactic Academy trained students from over 50 different species. The curriculum covered everything from advanced physics to interstellar diplomacy to combat strategy. Most students graduated to become leaders in their respective civilizations. Some became legends. Nowhere in the materials did Sarah find any mention of humans. She searched through the historical records and found nothing. Earth was listed in the Academy's database only as a minor planet in an unremarkable solar system. Humans were classified as a developing species, not yet advanced enough for galactic consideration. Sarah began to feel a cold knot forming in her stomach. Something was very wrong about her admission. The Academy appeared through the observation window, like a city made of stars. Sarah pressed her face against the glass and watched as the massive structure grew larger. Hundreds of ships moved around it like bees around a hive. She could see the main tower rising from the center, topped with a beacon that pulsed with soft white light. It was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. The transport docked at arrival platform 17. Sarah gathered her bag and walked down the ramp into a massive receiving hall. Thousands of students filled the space, representing species she had never imagined. There were the tall Valorians with their blue skin and silver eyes. There were the insectoid Cricks clicking their mandibles as they communicated. There were the bulky Corathians with their 4 arms and rocky skin. There were species that floated, species that crawled, species that seemed to be made of pure light. Sarah was the only human in sight. She approached the registration desk, where a Valorian administrator sat behind a holographic display. The administrator looked up and froze. His silver eyes went wide with confusion. "Name?" he asked slowly, as if speaking to a child. "Sarah Chen, Earth Colony 7. The administrator typed something into his console. He frowned. He typed again. His frown deepened. He stood up and excused himself, disappearing through a door behind the desk. Sarah waited. Around her, other students moved through the registration process smoothly. Many of them stared at her as they passed. Some whispered to each other. Sarah heard fragments of their conversations. Words like primitive and mistake floated through the air. The administrator returned with 2 other officials. One was a female Valorian wearing the red robes of a senior administrator. The other was a Corathian in a military uniform covered with medals. They all studied Sarah as if she were a specimen in a laboratory. "Miss Chen," the senior administrator said, "there appears to be an irregularity with your admission. Please come with us." Sarah followed them through a series of corridors until they reached a small office. The walls were covered with screens, showing data and charts. The senior administrator sat behind a desk and gestured for Sarah to sit in the chair across from her. My name is Administrator Vex, the Valorian said. I am in charge of student admissions at the Academy. Can you explain how you came to receive your acceptance letter? It arrived through our colony's communication relay, Sarah said. I thought you had sent it. We did send an acceptance letter, Vex said carefully. But it was intended for Sarah Chen of the Chenari Collective. The Chenari are a species from the Andromeda Galaxy. They are known for their genetic engineering abilities. One of their most promising young scientists shares your name. Sarah felt her heart sink. So it was a mistake. A clerical error in our communication system, Vex confirmed. The letter was sent to the wrong coordinates. It should have gone to the Chenari homeworld. Instead, it went to your human colony. The Carathian officer spoke up. His voice was deep and gravelly. The question now is what to do with you. You have seen our facility. You have traveled through protected hyperspace routes. This is a security concern. General Croth, Vex said with a warning tone. The human is not a spy. She is a child who received a letter by accident. She is still a member of an unauthorized species, Croth replied. The Academy charter is clear. Only approved civilizations may send students here. Humans are not approved. Sarah listened to them argue about her fate. She felt small and foolish. Of course there had been a mistake. Of course humans were not allowed at the greatest academy in the galaxy. She was just a girl from a mining colony who had dared to dream for 3 days. But something in her refused to accept defeat so easily. Excuse me, Sarah said. Both officials stopped talking and looked at her. You said the letter was meant for a scientist from the Chenari Collective. Someone who had taken an examination to prove their abilities. That is correct, Vex said. What kind of examination? Vex hesitated. The standard assessment for galactic excellence. It tests cognitive ability, problem-solving skills, and practical application across multiple disciplines. Can I take it? Sarah asked. Croth laughed. It was a harsh sound, like rocks grinding together. You are joking. The SAGE examination is designed for species with centuries of advanced education. Your kind has only been traveling in space for 200 years. You would not survive the first section. But if I passed, Sarah pressed on. If I passed the examination, would I be allowed to stay? Vex and Croth exchanged looks. The Carathian general seemed amused by the suggestion. The Valorian administrator appeared thoughtful. The charter does have a provision for exceptional circumstances, Vex admitted. If an individual demonstrates abilities far beyond their species' expected capacity, they may be admitted on a case-by-case basis. But Miss Chen, you must understand. The SAGE examination has been taken by billions of beings over 2,000 years. The average score is 62%. Passing requires 80%. The highest score ever recorded was 94%, achieved by a Valorian mathematician 300 years ago. I would like to try, Sarah said. Croth shook his head. This is a waste of time. It is her right to request the examination, Vex said. If she fails, we can send her home. If she somehow passes, we follow the charter. Either way, the situation is resolved. The general grumbled but did not argue further. Vex turned to Sarah with something that might have been respect in her silver eyes. The examination takes place tomorrow morning. You will have 6 hours to complete all sections. I will arrange temporary quarters for you tonight. Get some rest, Miss Chen. You will need it. Sarah was escorted to a small room in the student housing section. It was simple but clean, with a bed, a desk, and a window that looked out at the stars. She sat on the bed and tried to calm her racing thoughts. She had no idea what the examination would involve. She had no idea if she stood any chance of passing. But she had come too far to give up now. She pulled out her tablet and began searching through every piece of educational material she could find in the Academy's public database. The night passed slowly. Sarah read about quantum mechanics and stellar cartography. She studied the basics of interstellar diplomacy and the history of galactic conflicts. She memorized mathematical formulas and chemical equations. She did not sleep. When morning came, Sarah walked to the examination hall with heavy eyes but a determined heart. The hall was empty except for a single desk and a holographic interface. Administrator Vex stood by the door. Are you ready, Miss Chen? Yes, Sarah said. Vex nodded and activated the interface. A timer appeared in the air, counting down from 6 hours. Questions began to appear on the holographic screen. The first section tested mathematics. Sarah worked through equations involving dimensions she had never considered. She calculated orbital trajectories for planets that did not exist in her solar system. She solved puzzles that twisted her mind in uncomfortable directions. Some answers came easily. Others required every bit of concentration she had. The second section tested physics. Sarah answered questions about quantum entanglement and dark matter manipulation. She designed theoretical engines that could bend space-time. She analyzed energy signatures and predicted particle behavior. Her hands shook as she entered her answers, but she did not stop. The third section tested logic and problem-solving. Sarah was presented with scenarios involving alien cultures and impossible choices. She had to find solutions that satisfied multiple conflicting requirements. She had to identify patterns in data streams that seemed completely random. Her head began to pound, but she pushed through the pain. The fourth section tested practical application. Sarah was given simulated equipment and asked to repair it. She was placed in virtual environments and asked to survive. She was presented with broken systems and asked to make them work. Her fingers flew across the interface as she applied everything she had ever learned about fixing things on Colony 7. The fifth section tested creativity. Sarah was asked to design new technologies, solve open-ended problems, and imagine possibilities that had never existed. She drew on everything she had read the night before. She combined ideas from different disciplines in ways that felt natural to her. She let her mind wander and followed wherever it led. The sixth section tested adaptability. The questions changed format without warning. The time limits shifted. New challenges appeared while old ones were still unfinished. Sarah felt like she was drowning. But she kept swimming. She answered what she could and guessed at the rest. When the timer reached 0, Sarah collapsed against her desk. Her whole body trembled with exhaustion. She had no idea how she had done. She could not even remember most of the questions she had answered. Vex approached her with a strange expression on her face. The administrator was holding a data tablet, and her silver eyes were fixed on the screen. "Miss Chen," Vex said slowly, "your results have been processed." Sarah forced herself to sit up. "How did I do?" Vex did not answer immediately. She continued staring at the tablet as if she did not believe what she was seeing. Finally, she looked up at Sarah. 97%. Sarah blinked. "What? You scored 97% on the SAG's examination. That is the highest score in the history of the Academy. You have broken a record that stood for 300 years. Sarah felt dizzy. The room seemed to spin around her. "That is not possible. I am just a human from a mining colony. I did not even go to school. And yet the numbers do not lie," Vex said. "Miss Chen, I do not know how to explain this. Your brain appears to function in ways we have never seen before. You made connections between disciplines that our best students cannot see. You solved problems using methods that have never been attempted. You are not just intelligent, you are something entirely new." General Croth appeared in the doorway. His rocky face was twisted with disbelief. "I demand a retest. The human must have cheated somehow. The examination was monitored at every level," Vex replied. "There was no cheating. There was no external assistance. Miss Chen achieved this score through her own abilities. Then there is an error in the grading system. I have already verified the results 3 times. They are accurate." Croth looked at Sarah as if seeing her for the first time. The amusement was gone from his eyes. In its place was something that looked almost like fear. "What are you?" he demanded. Sarah did not know how to answer. She was just a girl who liked fixing things. A girl who read technical manuals for fun because there was nothing else to do on a dusty mining colony. A girl who had never considered herself special in any way. But the numbers on Vex's tablet told a different story. Somehow, against all logic and expectation, Sarah Chen had proven herself worthy of the greatest academy in the galaxy. Vex straightened and addressed both Sarah and Croth. "According to the charter, Miss Chen has demonstrated exceptional abilities beyond her species' expected capacity. She is hereby granted full admission to the Galactic Academy of Strategic Excellence. Her enrollment begins immediately." Croth stormed out without another word. Vex watched him go with a small smile on her blue lips. "Congratulations, Miss Chen. You have just done something that many people believed was impossible. Welcome to the Academy." Common. Sarah looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there, Colony 7 continued its quiet existence on the edge of human space. Her mother was probably working her shift at the processing plant. Marcus was probably repairing some piece of broken equipment. None of them knew what had just happened. None of them knew that a mistake in a communication system had led to the highest test score in galactic history. Sarah smiled despite her exhaustion. She had no idea what challenges waited for her at the academy. She had no idea how the other students would treat her. She had no idea if she truly belonged among the brightest minds of 50 different species, but she had earned her place. Not through luck or accident, but through her own abilities. The wrong file had reached the wrong planet and found the right girl, and nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same. News of Sarah's examination score spread through the academy like fire through dry grass. Within hours, every student and faculty member knew about the human girl who had broken the 300-year record. Reactions ranged from curiosity to admiration to outright hostility. Sarah was assigned to dormitory section 12, reserved for first-year students in the advanced track. Her room was small but comfortable, with a bed that adjusted to any species-preferred sleeping position and a desk equipped with the latest holographic technology. The window offered a stunning view of the nebula that surrounded the Academy's sector of space. On her first morning as an official student, Sarah walked to the communal dining hall for breakfast. The hall was massive, designed to accommodate thousands of beings with wildly different dietary needs. Some sections served food that glowed with strange colors, others offered meals that moved on their own. The human-compatible section was small and located in a far corner, but Sarah was grateful it existed at all. She collected a tray of what looked like oatmeal and found an empty table near the window. Before she could take her first bite, a shadow fell across her tray. A Valorian student stood over her. He was tall, even for his species, with pale blue skin and eyes that gleamed like polished silver coins. His expression radiated contempt. "So you are the human everyone is talking about," he said. "I am Kale Varant. My family has attended this academy for 12 generations. My grandmother is on the board of directors. My father commands the Valorian Defense Fleet." Sarah looked up at him calmly. "Nice to meet you, Kale. I am Sarah Chen. My mother works in a processing plant. My father was a miner who died in a cave collapse." Kale's eye twitched. He clearly had not expected such a direct response. "You do not belong here, human. Whatever trick you use to pass that examination, it will not save you in actual classes. You will fail. You will embarrass yourself, and when you do, everyone will see that humans are nothing but primitive animals pretending to be civilized." "I look forward to proving you wrong," Sarah said. She took a bite of her oatmeal and chewed slowly. Kyle made a sound of disgust and walked away. Several other students at nearby tables had been watching the exchange. Some of them laughed quietly at Kale's failed attempt at intimidation. Others looked at Sarah with new interest. One of those students approached her table after Kale had gone. She was a Crix, the insectoid species Sarah had noticed at the registration hall. Her carapace was dark green, and her compound eyes reflected the light like tiny gemstones. She moved with quick, precise gestures. "May I join you?" the Crix asked. Her voice was surprisingly musical despite coming from mandibles that clicked softly as she spoke. "Please," Sarah said, gesturing to the empty seat across from her. The Crix settled into the chair and placed her own tray on the table. Her meal appeared to be some kind of crystalline substance that shimmered as she ate it. "I am Zix of the Third Hive," the Crix said. "I watched your exchange with Kale Varant. You handled yourself well. Most new students cower before him because of his family connections. I did not travel across the galaxy to cower," Sarah replied. Zix made a clicking sound that Sarah interpreted as laughter. "I like you, Sarah Chen. You have spirit. The Crix value adaptability and courage above all other traits. You appear to possess both. Thank you." "What are you studying here?" "Biological engineering. My species has developed methods of growing technology rather than building it. I hope to advance our techniques by learning from other disciplines." Zix tilted her head curiously. "What about you? What drew you to the academy?" Sarah explained the situation honestly. She told Zix about the administrative error, the misdirected acceptance letter, and her decision to take the SAGE examination, rather than simply going home. Zix listened with growing amazement. "So you had only one night to prepare for an examination that most students spend years studying for, and you still achieved the highest score in history." Zix's mandibles clicked rapidly. The Crix have a saying, "When the unexpected path leads to unexpected success, the universe is speaking." Perhaps you were meant to be here, Sarah Chen. Perhaps the mistake was not a mistake at all. Sarah thought about that as she finished her breakfast. She had always believed in hard work and determination rather than fate or destiny. But there was something strangely comforting about the idea that some higher force had guided her to this place. Her first class was Advanced Theoretical Physics, taught by Professor Vaughn, a Korathian who had spent 50 years studying the fundamental forces of the universe. The classroom was a curved amphitheater with seats arranged in rising tiers around a central demonstration area. Sarah arrived early and found a seat in the middle tier. Other students filtered in gradually. She recognized several species from her orientation materials. There were 3 Valorians sitting together near the top, their blue skin making them easy to spot. There were 2 Cricks in the row behind her. There was a floating sphere of energy that Sarah assumed was a being made entirely of light. Kale Verant entered with a group of friends and took a seat directly in front of Sarah. He turned around and gave her a mocking smile before facing the front again. Professor Vaughn entered through a door at the bottom of the amphitheater. The Korathian was massive, even larger than General Croth, with 4 arms covered in what looked like natural armor plating. His voice boomed through the room without any need for amplification. "Welcome to Advanced Theoretical Physics. I am Professor Vaughn. I have taught at this academy for 23 years. In that time, I have seen students of extraordinary talent and students who should never have been admitted. The difference between success and failure in this class is simple. Those who work hard will learn. Those who rely on natural ability alone will struggle." He paused and looked directly at Sarah. "I have been informed that we have a new student joining us under unusual circumstances. Miss Chen, please stand." Sarah stood. Every eye in the room turned to look at her. She felt her cheeks flush with embarrassment. Miss Chen achieved the highest score on the SAG examination in the history of this academy, Professor Vaughn continued. "Some of you may view this with skepticism. Some of you may view it with resentment. I view it as an opportunity. For the first time, we have a student whose mental processes are entirely different from anything we have encountered before. I look forward to seeing what she brings to our discussions." He gestured for Sarah to sit. She lowered herself back into her chair, feeling the weight of everyone's stares. "Now then," Professor Vaughn said, "let us begin. Today we will discuss the nature of dimensional barriers and the theoretical possibility of interdimensional travel." The lecture was fascinating and completely overwhelming. Professor Vaughn covered concepts that Sarah had never even imagined. He spoke of dimensions folded within dimensions, of barriers between realities that could be weakened through precise manipulation of quantum fields. He drew diagrams in the air using holographic technology, showing how matter might theoretically pass through solid objects by briefly shifting into an adjacent dimension. Sarah took notes furiously, her tablet filled with sketches and equations and fragments of ideas. She did not understand everything the professor said, but she understood enough to follow the general thread of his argument. At one point, Professor Vaughn posed a question to the class. "The primary obstacle to interdimensional travel is the immense energy requirement. Current estimates suggest that moving a single kilogram of matter between dimensions would require more power than a medium-sized star produces in 1 year. Can anyone propose a theoretical solution to this problem?" Several students raised their hands. A Valorian suggested using antimatter reactors. A being of pure energy proposed harvesting power directly from black holes. K.L. Verant offered a complex solution involving quantum entanglement and parallel processing. Professor Vaughn listened to each suggestion and pointed out the flaws in their reasoning. The antimatter approach was too unstable. The black hole method was too dangerous. Kale's solution, while clever, still required more energy than any known civilization could produce. Sarah had been thinking about the problem while the others spoke. An idea had formed in her mind, something she was not sure made any sense. But she raised her hand anyway. "Yes, Miss Chen. What if we are approaching the problem from the wrong direction?" Sarah said. "Instead of trying to generate enough energy to force matter through the dimensional barrier, what if we found a way to make the barrier thinner in a specific location, like finding a weak spot in a wall rather than trying to break through the strongest point?" The room fell silent. Professor Vaughn stroked his rocky chin with one of his 4 hands. "Continue," he said. Sarah stood, her voice growing more confident as she developed her idea. "The dimensional barrier is not uniform. There are places where it naturally weakens, such as near massive gravitational sources or during certain types of stellar events. If we could identify these weak points and predict when they occur, we might be able to use a fraction of the energy to achieve the same result." She walked to the front of the room and used the holographic display to illustrate her point. Imagine the barrier as a piece of fabric stretched across a frame. Normally it is tight and strong, but if you apply pressure at certain points, the fabric weakens temporarily. If you time your push perfectly with one of these moments of weakness, you need much less force to break through. Professor Vaughn stared at her diagram for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was unusually quiet. "Miss Chen, Are you aware that you have just proposed a theory that several teams of our best scientists have been working toward for decades? The concept of barrier fluctuation mapping has been theoretical for over 100 years. No one has ever thought to combine it with predictive timing models in the way you just described. Sarah shook her head. I did not know that. I just thought about the problem and that answer seemed logical. Logical, Professor Vaughn repeated. He laughed, a deep rumbling sound that filled the room. She calls it logical. Miss Chen, I believe you may have just pointed us toward a breakthrough that could revolutionize interstellar travel. Please see me after class. I would like to discuss this further. Sarah returned to her seat. She could feel the other students staring at her with new expressions. Some looked impressed, others looked jealous. Kael Varant's face had gone pale with fury. After class, Sarah met with Professor Vaughn in his office. The room was filled with models of celestial objects and shelves of actual paper books. A rarity in an age of digital information. Your mind works differently than ours, the professor said, settling into a chair that creaked under his weight. We have been approaching this problem using established frameworks and methods. You looked at it with fresh eyes and saw something we had missed. I do not understand why that is special, Sarah admitted. I just thought about it the way I would think about any broken piece of equipment. Find the weakness, use leverage, apply force efficiently. That is precisely what makes you special. You do not know our accepted theories, so you are not limited by them. Your ignorance has become your greatest strength. Professor Vaughn pulled up a holographic display showing a complex research proposal. I would like to invite you to join my research team. We meet 3 times per week to work on advanced theoretical projects. Most first-year students are not eligible, but I believe you could contribute something valuable. Sarah accepted immediately. She left the professor's office feeling like she was walking on air. The feeling did not last. When she returned to her dormitory, she found Kael Varant waiting for her in the hallway. He was not alone. 3 other Valorian students stood behind him, their silver eyes gleaming with hostility. You think you are so clever, Kael said, making a fool of me in front of the entire class, coming up with theories that impress the professors. I was just answering a question, Sarah replied calmly. I did not intend to make anyone look foolish. You are the fool, human. You do not understand how things work here. This academy is about more than grades and clever ideas. It is about connections, power, influence. My family has shaped galactic policy for centuries. Yours barely knows how to leave its own solar system. He stepped closer, towering over Sarah. Stay out of my way. Stop trying to outshine your betters. Learn your place, or I will teach it to you. Sarah met his gaze without flinching. I came here to learn, Kael. I came here to become the best version of myself. If that bothers you, then maybe the problem is not with me. For a moment, she thought Kael might actually hit her. His hands clenched into fists. His companions shifted forward eagerly. But then footsteps echoed down the hallway, and a faculty member appeared around the corner. Kael relaxed his hands and smiled a cold, dangerous smile. This is not over, human. Watch your back. He walked away with his friends following. Sarah let out a breath she had not realized she was holding. Her heart was pounding, but she refused to let fear control her. The weeks that followed established a pattern. Sarah attended classes and absorbed knowledge at an incredible rate. She joined Professor Vaughn's research team and contributed ideas that earned growing respect from senior academics. She became friends with Zix and a few other students who did not care about species prejudice, and at every turn, Kael Varant worked to undermine her. He spread rumors that she had cheated on her examination. He convinced some professors to grade her work more harshly than other students. He organized social events that specifically excluded humans. He made sure Sarah knew that she was unwelcome at the academy. But Sarah refused to give up. Every insult made her more determined. Every obstacle made her work harder. She spent her nights studying in the library until her eyes burned. She ran simulations and conducted experiments and pushed herself beyond what she had thought possible. 3 months after her admission, Sarah submitted her first original research paper to the Academy Scientific Journal. It expanded on the theory she had proposed in Professor Vaughn's class, providing mathematical proofs and experimental predictions. The paper was accepted for publication within a week, a record for a first-year student. When the news spread, Sarah found a message waiting on her personal tablet. It was from Administrator Vex. Miss Chen, you continue to exceed expectations. The Galactic Council has taken notice of your work. They have requested a presentation of your research at the upcoming Summit of Scientific Advancement. This is an extraordinary honor. Please report to my office tomorrow morning to discuss preparations. Sarah stared at the message for a long time. The Galactic Council was the highest governing body in known space. Representatives from every major civilization sat on its committees. Being invited to present before them was the kind of opportunity that most scientists never received in their entire careers. She thought about her mother back on Colony 7, still working double shifts in the processing plant. She thought about Marcus, still repairing broken equipment in the dusty mining tunnels. She thought about everyone who had ever told her that humans were too primitive, too young, too insignificant to matter in the vast sweep of galactic history. Tomorrow, she would begin preparing for the most important moment of her life. And somewhere in the back of her mind, a voice whispered that this was only the beginning. The summit of scientific advancement was held once every 5 years on the Grand Council Station, a massive structure that served as the political heart of the galaxy. Representatives from over 100 civilizations would gather to share discoveries, debate policies, and shape the future of interstellar society. Sarah would be presenting her research to an audience of the most powerful beings in known space. Administrator Vex helped Sarah prepare for the journey. The Valorian had become something of a mentor over the past months, offering guidance and protection against the political forces that still wanted the human girl removed from the academy. The council members will be watching you closely, Vex said as they reviewed the presentation materials. Some of them are genuinely interested in your research. Others are looking for any excuse to dismiss you and everything you represent. What do I represent? Sarah asked. Change, fear, possibility. Vex paused, choosing her words carefully. For 2,000 years, the established species have controlled the flow of knowledge and power in this galaxy. Your existence threatens that control. If a human from a primitive mining colony can outperform our best minds, what does that say about our systems? What does it say about us? Sarah understood. She was not just a student presenting a paper. She was a symbol, whether she wanted to be or not. The transport to the Grand Council Station took 2 days. Sarah used the time to practice her presentation until she could deliver it in her sleep. Zix had volunteered to accompany her as moral support, and the Cricks helped by asking challenging questions that Sarah might face from the audience. When they arrived at the station, Sarah was struck by its sheer scale. The Grand Council Station was larger than some planets, a sprawling complex of towers and domes and connecting structures that stretched across dozens of kilometers. Millions of beings lived and worked within its halls. The presentation was scheduled for the 3rd day of the summit. Sarah spent the first 2 days attending other sessions and observing how different species interacted. She watched diplomats negotiate treaties with subtle gestures. She saw scientists argue passionately about conflicting theories. She learned that beneath the surface of civilized discussion, power games played out in every conversation. On the morning of her presentation, Sarah woke early and prepared with extra care. She dressed in the formal robes that Vex had provided, designed to show respect for the occasion, while marking her as a representative of Earth. The fabric was midnight blue, decorated with silver patterns that resembled the stars visible from her home colony. Zix met her outside the presentation hall. The Crix's carapace had been polished until it gleamed, and she carried a small device that would display Sarah's holographic illustrations. How are you feeling? Zix asked. Terrified, Sarah admitted. But also ready. They entered the hall together. The space was enormous, with seating arranged in concentric rings around a central speaking platform. Hundreds of beings had already taken their places. Sarah recognized representatives from species she had studied at the academy. She also noticed several faces she did not recognize, beings from civilizations so distant that they rarely participated in galactic affairs. In the front row sat the Council's executive committee, 5 beings who held more power than most planetary governments. A Valorian elder with silver hair that fell to her waist, a Corathian warrior covered in metals, a being of pure energy that pulsed with soft golden light, a creature that looked like a living shadow, its form constantly shifting, and finally, a human. Sarah had not known that a human sat on the Galactic Council. The man appeared to be in his 60s, with gray hair and sharp eyes that studied her with intense interest. He wore robes similar to hers, marked with symbols that identified him as a representative of the United Earth government. Before she could process this surprise, a voice announced her turn to present. Sarah walked to the central platform and looked out at the assembled audience. Her heart was pounding, but her hands were steady. Distinguished members of the council, honored guests, fellow scientists, she began. I am Sarah Chen of Earth Colony 7. Thank you for this opportunity to share my research with you. She launched into her presentation, explaining her theory of dimensional barrier fluctuation mapping with the predictive timing models she had developed. The holographic displays showed complex equations and simulated experiments. Her voice grew stronger as she described the potential applications. Faster than light travel. Without the massive energy requirements of current methods, the ability to explore dimensions that had previously been unreachable, new possibilities for communication across vast distances. The audience listened in silence. Sarah watched their reactions as she spoke. Some faces showed genuine interest. Others displayed skepticism. A few seemed openly hostile, particularly among the Valorian contingent. When she finished, the hall remained quiet for a long moment. Then the questions began. A Carathian scientist asked about the mathematical foundations of her predictions. Sarah answered with confidence. Walking through the equations step by step, a being of pure energy questioned the practical limitations of barrier detection technology. Sarah acknowledged the current limitations but outlined pathways for future development. Then a Valorian council member stood. Sarah recognized the family resemblance immediately. This was Cale Varant's grandmother, the woman who sat on the Academy's board of directors. Miss Chen, the elder Varant said, your theory is certainly creative, but I must ask a fundamental question. How can we trust research produced by a member of a species that has barely begun to explore space? Humans have no experience with interdimensional physics. Your civilization has not even achieved basic unity. How can you claim to have solved a problem that has challenged our greatest minds for centuries? The words were delivered with perfect politeness, but the message was clear. Sarah was being dismissed not based on her work, but based on her species. Sarah took a deep breath. Council Member Varant, you raise an important point about experience and credentials. Allow me to offer a different perspective. She stepped away from the podium and walked toward the center of the platform. 12,000 years ago, your species made first contact with other civilizations. At that time, humans were building pyramids with copper tools. We were developing writing systems and learning to grow crops. By your standards, we were primitive. She turned to face the full audience. But in just 12,000 years, we have gone from stone tools to starships. We have developed nuclear power, artificial intelligence, and genetic engineering. We have sent probes to other galaxies and established colonies across our arm of the Milky Way. Measured by our rate of progress, humans are the fastest developing species in recorded history. The hall stirred with murmurs. Sarah continued before anyone could interrupt. The question is not whether humans have experience. The question is whether our different perspective might offer something valuable. I did not solve this problem by following established methods. I solved it by thinking about it in a way that no one else had tried. My lack of formal training was not a weakness. It was an advantage. She pointed to the equations still hovering in the holographic display. This theory works. The mathematics are sound. The predictions are testable. I am not asking you to trust me because of my species. I am asking you to evaluate my work on its own merits. The human council member rose from his seat. The hall fell silent as he walked toward the platform. He studied Sarah for a long moment before speaking. My name is Marcus Chen, he said. I am the representative of the United Earth government on this council. And yes, Sarah, we share more than just a name. Your father was my brother. Sarah felt the world tilt beneath her feet. What? Your father died in that mining accident when you were 9 years old. What you were never told was that he had been a researcher before he became a miner. He was studying advanced physics when the government cut funding for his program. He took the mining job to support his family, but he never stopped thinking about the questions that had driven his work. Marcus reached into his robes and pulled out a small data crystal. Before he died, he sent me his notes. Theories he had developed, but never had the chance to test. I have been waiting for years to find someone who could understand them. He handed the crystal to Sarah. Your father's work focused on dimensional barrier fluctuations. He believed that the barrier could be weakened at specific points, given the right conditions. He called it the thin places theory. Sarah stared at the crystal in her hand. Her father had never spoken to her about his research. She had always assumed he was just a miner, just an ordinary man trying to provide for his family. Why did you never tell me? She whispered. I lost contact with your mother after your father's death. The colony communication systems are limited, and I never expected that you would end up here, presenting a theory that mirrors everything your father dreamed of achieving. The audience was watching this exchange with obvious fascination. The elder Varant looked uncomfortable. her attempt to dismiss Sarah having been completely overshadowed by this revelation. Marcus turned to address the full council. Sarah Chen developed her theory independently, without any knowledge of her father's work. This suggests that her conclusions are not the result of inherited bias, but of genuine insight. The fact that two humans from the same family, separated by decades and circumstances, arrived at the same fundamental truth should tell us something important. He gestured broadly at the assembled representatives. We have built our civilization on the assumption that established species know best. We have created systems that privilege age and tradition over innovation and fresh perspective, and we have stagnated. The great problems of our galaxy remain unsolved while we argue about who has the right to propose solutions. His voice rose with passion. This young woman from a mining colony has done what our best scientists could not. She has pointed us toward a breakthrough that could transform interstellar travel, and she did it in her first months as a student, working without resources or support, facing discrimination at every turn. If that is not proof of human potential, I do not know what is. The hall erupted in debate. Some voices supported Marcus's argument. Others pushed back, defending the traditional order. The noise grew until the council chair called for silence. We will take a recess to consider the implications of today's presentation, the chair announced. Miss Chen, please remain available for follow-up questions. Sarah found herself surrounded by beings of various species as she left the platform. Scientists wanted to discuss the technical details of her work. Diplomats wanted to know more about her background. Journalists wanted interviews. It was overwhelming and exhilarating at the same time. Through the crowd, she saw Kyle Verant watching her from across the hall. His expression was unreadable. For a moment, she thought he might approach, but he turned and walked away without a word. That evening, Sarah sat with her uncle in a quiet garden on the station's upper levels. They talked for hours about her father, about the family history she had never known, about the strange path that had led her to this moment. Your father always believed that humans had a unique role to play in the galaxy, Marcus said. He thought that our rapid development, our adaptability, our willingness to try new approaches, made us special, not better than other species, but different in ways that mattered. Why did he give it up? Sarah asked. If he believed so strongly in his research, why did he become a miner? Because research does not feed a family when funding is cut. Because your mother was pregnant and needed stability. Because he loved you more than he loved his theories. Marcus smiled sadly. He never stopped working, though. He spent his nights writing in those notebooks, developing ideas he knew he would never be able to test himself. Sarah looked at the data crystal still clutched in her hand. Inside were her father's dreams, preserved across years and distance. I want to continue his work, she said. I want to finish what he started. I was hoping you would say that. The council has already indicated that they will fund further research into your dimensional barrier theory. You will have access to resources your father could never have imagined. Marcus put his hand on her shoulder. He would be so proud of you, Sarah. You have no idea how proud. The summit concluded 3 days later with a formal announcement. Sarah's research would be prioritized for development. A new institute would be established, led by Sarah herself, to explore the practical applications of her theory. Representatives from dozens of species volunteered to contribute resources and expertise, but perhaps most importantly, the council passed a resolution opening academy admission to all species, regardless of their civilization's age or development level. Humans were no longer excluded, neither were any other species that had previously been considered too primitive. Sarah returned to the Galactic Academy as a celebrity. Students who had once ignored her now sought her attention. Faculty members who had questioned her presence now asked for her opinions. Even some of the Valorians who had followed Kale's lead began treating her with respect. Kale himself approached her on her first day back. He found her in the library, surrounded by research materials and holographic displays. I owe you an apology, he said. The words seemed to cost him great effort. Sarah looked up from her work. Why? Because I was wrong about you. I thought you were a fraud, a mistake, someone who did not belong here. I thought that if I pushed hard enough, you would break and prove me right. He sat down across from her, his silver eyes avoiding her gaze. Instead, you exceeded every expectation. You achieved things I could never accomplish despite all my advantages. You proved that your species deserves a place among us. Kale, Sarah said slowly, you have spent the past months trying to destroy me. That does not disappear with an apology. I know, and I am not asking for forgiveness. I am asking for a chance to learn from you. He finally met her eyes. I have been taught all my life that the Valorians are the pinnacle of galactic civilization, that our way is the only way. You have shown me that there are other perspectives worth considering. Sarah studied him for a long moment. She saw the pride that still lingered beneath his humble words. She saw the resentment that would take years to fully fade. But she also saw something new, a genuine willingness to change. We have a research team meeting tomorrow evening, she said. You can attend as an observer. If you contribute something useful, we can discuss making it permanent. Cale nodded and stood to leave. At the doorway, he paused. For what it is worth, I think you are going to change this galaxy, Sarah Chen. I just hope we are all ready for what that means. 6 months later, Sarah stood in the control room of the newly completed Dimensional Research Institute. The facility floated in deep space, far from any planetary bodies that might interfere with their experiments. Through the observation window, she could see the first prototype of her dimensional transit device, a massive ring of energy collectors and barrier sensors, capable of detecting the weak points in the fabric of reality. Zix stood beside her, manning one of the control consoles. Professor Vaughn monitored the power systems. Administrator Vex had come to witness the historic first test. Even Kale was there, having proven himself a valuable member of the research team over the past months. Barrier fluctuation detected, Zix announced. Coordinates confirmed. The weak point is exactly where we predicted. Power level stable, Vaughn reported. We are ready to proceed. Sarah took a deep breath. In a few moments, they would attempt something that had never been done before. They would send a probe through the dimensional barrier and into an adjacent reality. If it worked, it would be the first step toward a new era of exploration and discovery. She thought about her father, who had dreamed of this moment but never lived to see it. She thought about her mother, who had sacrificed so much to give her daughter a chance at something better. She thought about Marcus, who had kept her father's legacy alive until she was ready to receive it. And she thought about herself, the girl from Colony 7. The mistake that was not a mistake. The wrong file that had found the right girl. Begin the sequence, Sarah said. The device hummed to life. Energy crackled along its surface. The barrier sensors detected the weakening of dimensional walls, and the collectors focused their power on the precise point where reality was thinnest. A portal opened. Through it, Sarah could see another universe. Strange stars in unfamiliar patterns, colors that had no names in any known language, possibilities that no one had ever imagined. The probe launched and crossed the threshold. Data began streaming back immediately, filling their screens with information about a reality that had existed forever beyond their reach. Cheers erupted in the control room. Scientists embraced each other. Even the usually stoic Valorians allowed themselves smiles of triumph. But Sarah stood quietly at the window, watching the portal shimmer in the darkness of space. She knew this was just the beginning. There would be more discoveries, more challenges, more beings who doubted her because of her species or her background. The galaxy was vast, and change came slowly, but it came. One step at a time, one breakthrough at a time, one determined human at a time. The portal closed as the power system cycled down. The team began analyzing the data, already planning the next experiment. Sarah allowed herself a small smile. Somewhere, across the gulf between life and death, she hoped her father was watching. She hoped he could see what his daughter had accomplished. She hoped he knew that his dreams had not died with him in that mining accident, but had lived on in the girl who had inherited his gift for seeing possibilities where others saw only problems. The universe was bigger than anyone had imagined, and humanity was finally ready to explore it. Sarah turned from the window and joined her team. There was work to do. There was always work to do, and for the first time in her life, she was exactly where she belonged.